Welcome for those that are coming for the first time. Welcome back for those that are already in their second, third, I don't know. My name is Rachel. I'm one of the organizers of data+women in the Netherlands. We are a volunteering group, a global initiative. We have chapters in different parts of the world. And here in the Netherlands, we've been organizing events since 2018 to 19 when we started. And the main idea of the group is to bring visibility to women. A very important thing for us is that we open to everyone. So guys that are here, you're very welcome to join. And the idea is that we bring speakers that are always women. And for those of you that are in the audience and get inspired by today, if you want to either volunteer and help our organizers team, if you want to host an event with us in your company, like Databricks is doing here today, so thanks for the Databricks people for hosting us. Or if you want to speak, please, you can use this form. This works, it should. Or you can talk to any of them. We have Marisa is also one of the organizers that is there. And Timmy, she's stuck in traffic. She's this lady here. You see her late here. And just before we start, first of all, huge thanks for everyone, for sponsors, for speakers, for attendees, for coming here today for the Women's Day. A couple of things that we would like your attention, of course, the phone, because sometimes we have a phone in the middle of the event. It's a bit disturbing, so if you could check. I think that I forgot to check mine, so if it does disturb you, sorry, I will check it later. If you'd like to share, please use the hashtag data+women so we can see you in social media, we can like and reshare. And be sure to stay for the networking in the end, because that's one of the main ideas of our events, to have a space for networking. And that is the agenda for today. We will start with Eva, that I will do a quick intro here. And what we're doing today to celebrate Women's Day is a little trip back in time. I know that some people here in the room, maybe they are not from this era, but in the past, connected to the internet, involved a lot of noise, anxiety, and checking and praying to see if no one picked up the landline. I don't know who remembers this era of internet. I see that some of you didn't live this amazing moment. It was we used to give much more value to internet then. And I'm talking about this because when our guest speaker, Eva Fors, started her career, Windows 95 was the hate of fashion. And she didn't just use it, she landed in the Microsoft internal marketing team. And clearly finding that the snacks there were okay, she stayed for over 20 years at Microsoft. And she didn't stop there. She also, like getting all the tech titans on her CV, she went to Google, where she spent another decade. And Google, that you all know, it's like a company that just changed their vocabulary, right? Because nowadays, if you want to see something, you want to check something, you just use the verb Google, right? That is a tech company. And not yet done with the big names. Since last year, Eva, she came to Databricks, where she is the vice president for Nordics and Benelux. And of course, as you can see, she has seen a lot of things in the tech. She saw how it evolved, how it changed from the flop disks to the GenAI boom. And we're beyond thrilled to have her here today. So please all welcome Eva to tell us how it changed for women in data in tech.
When I hear these introductions, I get a little bit sort of, my God, how old am I? Am I a dinosaur? I hope I'm not. I don't feel like a dinosaur. Sometimes I'm getting a bit surprised when people are talking about the newborn babies. It was quite some time since I had newborn babies. So that's usually how I find that maybe we're not in the same age as when people are talking about, the age of their kids. first starting a little bit about myself. So born and raised in the super small seaside town Norrtälje, 70 kilometers north of Stockholm. Only child, and went as soon as I possibly could to the University of Uppsala, where I studied business and economics. So I'm not an engineer by education, but I've only worked in the tech industry. So that's the only thing I've been doing. But I assume, how many of you are engineers in this room? Yeah, no, I thought you were going to be more, actually. So no, I'm not the only one not having a degree in engineering. In Uppsala, I met my husband. So we have been together for more than 30 years. And we have 2 lovely boys, Viggo and Ruben. And it's kind of fun because now we don't have any kids at home any longer. So both have moved out. So you kind of start from scratch. And there's also a time where you realize you're a little bit older, because we are doing all the fun things that you did pre-kids. You know, I can go out to restaurants whenever I want. I can do, fly wherever I want. I can just do things. The freedom kind of comes back to you. It's a little bit not so free in a certain period of time where you have smaller kids, but things will come more free again. And my big passion in life is skiing. I love skiing. So far, I have 25 days this season, and I think I'm going to squeeze in another 17 days. I was calculating, how many more weekends am I going to go up north, because we have an apartment up north. So I'm a passionate skier. And I'm a curious, impatient optimist. So not a CIO in that nature, but I always try to look at the bright side. And I usually come across with quite high energy. And, life is so boring if you just try to see it from sort of, I don't think so. And just quickly, you already heard about, my professional journey. So straight out of uni, it was a very difficult time. It was a macroeconomic meltdown. I thought it was going to be sort of an auditor, which would be kind of boring. I don't think I would have fit in there at all, but it was a macroeconomic meltdown. There were no jobs available. So I squeezed myself in a backdoor for actually a publishing company that just months later had a maternity leave that they needed to cover. So they asked me, can Eva come in to Microsoft and actually do both roles? And my former employer said, sure, she can. So I sneaked in the back door at Microsoft 1995, exactly to the point of when we were launching Windows 95. Multitasking for the first time. If anybody, remember pre and post multitasking, I'm not sure if anybody does, but it was kind of interesting because pre-multitasking, if you started to print something, you then need to take a coffee because the PC just, froze because it was printing. Now these things are not there any longer. Another one which just show my dinosaur age is people didn't have internet access, and then it was called out that a few people are going to get internet access based on the role that you're having. And I was one of the lucky ones. I was doing some marketing thing, and I was going to get internet access. Yay, I have internet access. And then I sort of so what am I going to do with that? I didn't understand because there was nothing to do about that internet access. But had an amazing time at Microsoft. I was there for 19 and a half years. I didn't pass that thin line of 20 years of service. It was actually one of the reasons, a trigger for me moving on. I felt if I pass that imaginary line of 20 years of service, I'm never going to get out of there. But I did a lot of fun things there. I had the opportunity to do 14 different jobs, had 2 maternity leaves, and was a constant learner. And that is one of the key characteristics of myself. I have a big L on my back, but I'm too impatient to be super deep into anything. I don't have the patience to really, really learn deep. And I think that is also one of the strengths for me as a leader, because I'm never the best in the group of whatever we are doing. I hire people that are far better than myself, but I'm pretty good at getting sort of the helicopter perspective, getting the reason why we exist, finding the purpose, and also setting the North Star. And then let's bring on the people that really know how to do things. But it was a really, really fun time going from the PC era, going from on-premise to cloud, launching both Office 365 and Azure. Super, super fun. But at one point in time, besides having the imaginary line of 20 years of service, I also felt I was kind of stuck against the wall because Microsoft changed radically during those 19 years. From you could do everything from the local market. We were creating our own TV commercials from scratch, but then things became dictated more and more from Seattle. So I felt I cannot maneuver any longer. The last job I had, I was a chief operating officer. So it was really fun, running the company together with the general manager. So, was accountable for a $1 billion P&L. But I couldn't really, everything was dictated from Seattle. So I was so sick and tired of it. And I still loved Microsoft and the values, and I still honor. I'm not sure, is there anybody from Microsoft here? Nope. Yay! No, I think Microsoft is an amazing company still. Super value-based and also having a higher purpose that really resonated well with me. But I wanted to do something different, and I wanted to go to another American matrix organization. At that point in time, it was this busy startup era, and I felt I want to become a CEO of a startup. So then I started to meet a lot of VC companies, we had a perfect match in an IoT company called Janssen Networks. So they need an external CEO that could commercialize the company, that could build the organization, and also build partnerships. So they brought me in as an external CEO. And that was, 100% a Watson platform. So we were one of the few that actually did Bluemix for real. Many people see Watson as a marketing concept, and even more at that point in time. But we did it for real, so we got the unproportional love from IBM. It was really, really fun. And also going from running $1 billion P&L and had 550 people, working in the organization, to 18 people bootstrapped, and really need to think about, what's the value we bring. So it was a lot of fun. And then Google pinged me and said, hey, we're going to start a big new business. I had never seen Google being a competitor of Microsoft. It was a bit of an annoying mosquito that tried to get to our education customers. And I lost a deal on H&M for the store workers. That was more or less the only time I got into competition with Google. But then they said, we're actually going to build a B2B business. And I had so much waited for, when is Google going to get serious in the B2B space? Because they have the technology, they have the money, they didn't have the strategy. And when all of these things were coming together, I felt, this is an opportunity I just cannot miss. Because the 19 years at Microsoft, I would say that the first 10 years, I was more in the learner seat versus being in impacting and influencing strategies. And here I felt I can actually be more or less from the start and have an impact and an influence on how we go to market and how we build up the whole Google Cloud motion. So that was an amazingly fun journey. 9 years. I didn't pass that double-digit tenure here as well, but it was awesome. It was all about growth hacking. It was all about building something from scratch, both organizational as well as from a business, and building the trust and the credibility with our customers. So really, really fun. And then spring last year, Databricks pinged and said, hey, we are looking for a vice president for the Benelux and the Nordics. And it took quite a lot of persuasion and dating before I realized that maybe this is actually a cool enough opportunity to jump ship from Google to Databricks. Anybody from Google here? Hey, yeah. So, but I decided that this is an opportunity I cannot miss. And for me, the trigger for it's a combination of a few things that I think is super relevant and super important for me. First and foremost, I need to have a technology that I really, really feel, resonates and is relevant to the customer. So something I can be proud of, something I can really stand behind and say, this is actually going to change the way you do business. This is actually going to change the way you address customers. So that was ticking in the box. The second one is growth hacking. The opportunities are endless. And I believe we have just started this journey. And when I say started, well, we are already a multi-billion-dollar business, so we are not really a small startup, but we have just started the exploration of what the Databricks platform can do for the customers, and we are constantly expanding it. So really, really fun. So that's why I'm here. And then a bit on what I think is important and relevant, and this is something that, first and foremost, I like the cheetah analogy. So cheetahs are the fastest animal on land, and they're also the best hunters on land. And what makes them so super successful? How many have been on a safari and seen them in action? Yeah, a few. Yeah, and Glenn, you're almost out of competition because you're from South Africa. But it's an amazing experience. And the reason for them being so successful is because they plan, they prioritize, and they really, really are focused. And I think that's the same thing we should apply on an everyday basis. We need to plan, we need to be focused, and we really need to make, the tough calls, because we all have 24 hours. Nobody has more. Time is the most democratized thing we have, more or less. Nobody gets more than 24, whether we like it or not. So we need to apply a bit more of the cheetah analogy. Rather than keeping ourselves busy, we need to understand, are we hunting for the right things here? Or are we just, strolling the savannah, which doesn't really serve anybody? And on that one, that also goes with what I find is important, is the beat per minute. So the metronome down here. Because again, it's not about putting more hours into your daily work. It is about making sure that every hour actually counts, and that you're increasing the beat per minute, that you're not sitting on things, but increasing the boom, 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 boom. That is how you get throughput. That is how you can actually create an impact in your everyday life, rather than saying, I need to put 6 more hours every week, because that's usually not the way to get better impact. And I also find it really important when you're working, when you're applying the cheetah analogy, you also need to ensure that you put in rest. If you're a professional sports athlete, you really ensure that the recharging periods are really, really built in. And similar, we need to do that in our everyday life. We need to ensure that we rest, we recharge, and you can do it very differently. Resting or recharging doesn't mean that you just put yourself on the couch and sleep for 10 hours. Resting and recharging can be, you need some more energy of something. As an example, if I'm in a budget process and the only thing I'm doing is budget and crunching sheets, then I might make sure I build in a lot of external engagement, a lot of customer meetings after that, because I need the new sort of energy of customer engagements. I don't need to sleep for 10 hours after I'm doing the budgeting. I need something else. And we are also very different. As an analogy, me and my husband are super different. As I said, we have been together for 30 years, so I think it works. I am super extrovert, and I love to do things. I can look at the diary and say, we have a completely empty weekend. What are we going to do? Who are we going to invite? What are social things we're going to do? And my husband said, yay, we finally have an empty weekend. Let's keep it empty. So find your own balance and your own energy motions. Super, super, super important. And the last one is a bit of combination of the imposter syndrome. And I might be a little bit judgmental and say, I find imposter syndrome a little bit more often in female rather than males. It doesn't say that males are sort of not doing it, but it comes across a little bit stronger when I'm engaging with females. And imposter syndrome, we all have it. I have it. And it serves as an energy to move forward to you reach, a certain threshold kind of, where it actually is draining you and it's pulling you down. And here I'm often using the sort of the brain surgeon analogy. I'm thinking a lot, taking a step back. I really think it's super important, using that, taking a step back, having the view from the balcony. And the way I'm thinking about it is, what's the worst thing that can happen? Is anybody going to die today? No, nobody's going to die. Okay, then you can peel the onion a little bit more. If nobody's going to die, what's the second worst thing that can happen? And if you do that, and you can do it to yourself, at the end of the day, your enormous problems or your worries or your fears, becomes quite tangible and easy to work with, that you can digest them and you can actually take them one by one. So for me, a few tips and tricks of how I think about the world, and how I try to keep the energy levels high and keep myself motivated to, do the best I possibly can every single day together with my team. But you just need to have a few techniques. And I'll close with a superpower that I have, and I haven't taught it. I guess I'm more or less born with it. I don't know. I'm really good at sleeping. I am a super good sleeper. I can sleep anywhere, and the second I put my head down on the pillow, I fall asleep. My husband is almost laughing at me because it goes in a blink. And I can sleep everywhere. I sleep on planes, which is good because I travel a lot. And that's, again, it's important. I know it's easy to say. Many people have challenges with sleep. But to me, that has also been part of it. I see some nods. It has helped me, of course. Super excited to be here with you again. Now I use the super excited. It's such an American word. I'm really, really happy to be here with you. Thank you so much.
All right. The next step of the evening is the panel. I think, Eva, if you want to pick a chair.
Yes.
I'll take this one. Can move these stickers. We also have Eva, Wendy, and Stacy, if you would like to join us. Right. So I'll start us off with some quick introductions of everyone. So I'll briefly introduce all of you, and then we'll go into questions. There's time for questions at the end. So if you think of any throughout, keep them in the back of your mind, and we'll get to them, hopefully. You've, of course, just met Eva, so I'm not going to actually introduce her again. I think you've done a tremendous job. We have right next to me, we have Ifat. She's a social entrepreneur who isn't just talking about the digital divide, she's closing it. As the founder of The Code to Change, her partnership with the Amsterdam University has already empowered over 4,500 women with vital digital and entrepreneurship skills. I think that's really impressive. We also have Stacy at the very back end of the row. Stacy leads the engineering backbone for one of the world's most iconic platforms, bridging the gap between complex infrastructure and global scale at Uber. Stacy is an example of how to balance high-level technical skill with the leadership needed to thrive in a male-dominated field, which I think, again, very impressive. And then finally, we have Wendy. Wendy has gone from leadership at Salesforce to founding More Equality and TechTogether.ai. Wendy is on a mission to humanize AI, which I think is very important this time, and challenge the tech status quo. She brings 20 years of expertise to the stage. She's worked on the board of American Chamber of Commerce for DEY, and she has been named a top 35 global inspiring women in 2024 by NBC Washington. And finally, my name is Marisa. I'm with Databricks. I am about to say I'm just a solutions architect at Databricks, but it's what I do from day to day. So I'm going to start with you, Eva, just in terms of question. I just heard you talk about imposter syndrome. And to me, that also goes into potentially being underestimated and how you deal with that. So how do you handle being underestimated without then overcompensating in your day-to-day?
Yeah. And while I guess you were, making it as a humor touch, don't use those vague words. So I'm just sort of stop that one. No, but for me, it's about this overcompensating and underestimated. For me, it's about the underestimating. It's a bias on their side. Don't put energy on trying to overcompensate. For me, it's just waste of energy and drain. What I'm trying to do in practice, and I think it has been a bit different from the early days in my career, where I was I had this stupid thing you could say right now, but I would never do anything that was, girly or female tasks. I would never bring the coffee. I would never take the notes. I would never do anything that was kind of, you could sort of attach to being a female task. I was always sitting on my hands and didn't do anything of that one. And then I turned it into an advantage, because being a female in this male-dominated world, you actually can make an impression pretty quickly. So I was always trying to, ensure that I came with value, came with relevance, and let them be with their underestimated thoughts. Don't bother.
Surprise them as you walk.
Yeah.
I like it. I think, Eva, based on your introduction, You mentioned, or in your introduction, it seems like you guide female talent on a new journey. I'm quite curious to know if there's any defining moments that changed your career trajectory for yourself.
Thank you for that. And yes, I agree with Eva on that. You are, wow, what you've achieved in terms of your role. I think that deserves a big hand. Please, can we just celebrate the role? Thank you. And I think this is something we need to do more for each other, whether you are a female or whether you are a male ally, as we are calling them. It doesn't happen, which leads to a lot of us underestimating ourselves all the time. And we're talking about imposter syndrome, my God. Just a brief intro, I started Code to Change precisely for that reason. When I moved to the Netherlands, and I've lived in multiple countries, by the way, North Africa, Europe, Asia, you name it. And after moving to Netherlands, I was told when I started applying for jobs, they would see my profile. I had presented at the UN about the issue of female digital inclusion and the associated gender digital divide, because we were pushing for, listen, guys, we need more women creating the technology that everybody is using, right? We didn't have smartphones yet. So we were like, no, we're going that way, please. I mean, if we don't include them now, these underrepresented groups, we will be at a disadvantage, because later on, after we've designed the product, we will realize, oh, wait, this doesn't account for, in case of health apps, for example, this doesn't account for female body. It doesn't account for the difference in the heart rate that the females might have. So we need to include them now, so that, the solutions that we design, the apps that we design, it represents the people that it is being designed for. I'm not even going yet into the underrepresented groups, right? I was still talking about women. After moving to the Netherlands, I started, of course, the advocacy, of course, but I also started to apply for jobs. And either they said, you're too overqualified, or they said, oh, you don't speak the language, whatnot. I made it through consultancy because I did have that experience. I did bring the experience. I had a degree in pharmacy. But at the same time, I did feel that kind of challenge of how, at every step, we were kind of put down. And Eva mentioned something very interesting, and I think we also have to value the experience that Eva is sharing. If you are a woman of color, you do not have that privilege to say, I'm not going to cooperate, because you're immediately kind of just removed, right? So you also need to kind of play it tactfully, so you don't get locked out. So please keep that in mind. But at the same time, there were platforms at the international forums where I spoke about the issue, and that's exactly how I did it. So you need to know where you need to put that, put your foot down, and where you have to kind of say, okay, I'm going to get through this phase and I'm going to show them later on. So kudos to everyone who's fighting it all the time. But the reason I started Code to Change was precisely for that reason, because I did make it as a consultant, and I said, okay, I'm going to show this shortcut to other women who are trying to find these opportunities and trying to break that, that gatekeeping that exists. And I'm talking about 2011, 2012. I relate to a lot of things that Eva said, like, okay, we still had to convince them where the technology is taking us, and the people just didn't understand what we were trying to say, whether it's the policy level, or the local government. They did not know, or they did not yet realize, they hadn't caught on how revolutionary, the changes that were coming, technological changes that were coming, how important they are, and how important it is the need to include all the segments of the society. I don't know if I've answered your question, but this is my experience with it. This is the reason I started the foundation, so that we could, systemically address the bias and the gatekeeping that was there. And we're still working on it. We've been working on it for almost 10, 15 years now. Last year, we won the award at the UN in Geneva for our 10 years of service. We've impacted close to 30,000 lives now globally with our programs and work. But every single time I'm invited to these panels, I feel like I'm sitting somewhere 10 years back, because there's still a lot more to done. There's a lot of progress, but I feel like there's still a lot more that needs to be done.
That's really, I can relate to there still being a lot to be done. I think it's great to hear that you've actually taken a personal experience that worked for you and then made that into something where you're helping so many other women to really achieve the same. So yeah, I really like that you're sharing your lessons, and thank you for sharing with us tonight as well. I'm moving on to Stacey. I would love to hear a little bit more from you about what could be a limiting belief that you might have had in the past that you've had to unlearn to get to where you are today.
Sure. When I started out, I thought I could change who I was in order to avoid danger, to avoid criticism, to avoid the bias. Could I be quieter? Could I be louder? Could I be prettier? Could I be something else? Could I be just so exceptional that none of this applied to me and I was treated as well as any of the men around me? And what I found was that none of that worked. It didn't matter how hard I tried. It didn't matter when I stopped talking. Then I got criticized on my facial expressions. It didn't matter when I, hit $1 billion run rate with my product. I was still criticized for asking difficult questions that made somebody uncomfortable. It didn't matter when I had 100% retention of my team, then something else was wrong. Those criticisms come no matter what you do. And so all you can do, and the only way I survive, is to be completely 100% true to who I am, which is loud and colorful, and I never, ever, ever blend in the room. And that has to be good enough. And if it's not, then it's not the right place. And so that's what I had to get past, was that I could not blend in. And I tried. I was less than half as successful doing it.
That's it really resonates with me, the perspective. Thank you for sharing. I think it's coming down to potentially some self-acceptance as well. Is that potentially?
I mean, I love who I am. I'm with somebody who loves who I am, and they remind me every day that I am absolutely amazing. A few people in the room know my partner, who is amazing and has made everything every success I've had possible.
That's amazing. Thanks for sharing. And then Wendy, for you also a question. So I wondered, you must have seen throughout your career quite a few systems, and I wondered how you would think about adapting to a system versus changing it. So when do you do which one?
I think you, especially as a manager, I don't know who is in a management position here. Very, very few. So I think what you learn when you get a new manager. So I worked for 8 years at Salesforce. I also 20 years corporate technology, and there is change, especially now, right? I had sometimes 5 managers in 1 year. And what is the first rule that you need to teach yourself? And that has to do with systems. Every manager gets suddenly a question. You need to report now on percentages instead of numbers, because the numbers are not good, or a different region, or we use a different system. If you want to make your own life very comfortable, try to figure out what makes the manager successful and do that as quick as possible, because then you are not of a burden. So I had with my team, for example, I had unwritten rules. So everybody had Friday afternoon off. And I did that because I had a team of only guys. And I said, but if I ask you on Tuesday evening, because we have a training to do and needs to be finished by the Monday next week, I want you to do it on Tuesday evening. So the next morning, when my manager or the MD of the Netherlands opens up their screen, it's like, oh, Wendy's team has already done it. But I also understand that on Tuesday evening you need to work and your wife is angry that you need to take her out on Friday afternoon, right? Go shopping. So I had these unwritten rules that worked really well with my team. And then you don't change the system, but you understand the system. And I love what Stacey just said. So I am very ADHD. And very high energy, like you are, very colorful, very outspoken. And I, very early on in my career, got to hear in every year's feedback meeting, I'm too loud, I'm too high energy. I need to be looking at my colleagues and I need to be more like them. And I wanted to change, but I couldn't, because I am like coming into a room and like shouting and bubbly and then I decided, I'm gonna just embrace who I am. but I'm going to be really good at it. And I'm going to be respectful to the company I work for. But I'm not like anybody else. I don't want to be like anybody else. And very quickly, people learn to accept me how I presented myself, which brings me to the second thing that I think was a question for you, for what can you do, internally of a company, and what you explained as well. How can you be relevant? How can you make a promotion without changing yourself? And my mentees know there's a couple of him here, and I'm really excited about that. But so I have a mentorship program on how to be fucking amazing. I've written a book about it as well, because I am confident. I love myself. Like what you said, I think seriously, if you don't love me, it's absolutely fine. I think I'm amazing, and I can teach you how to. And how do you make a promotion within a company? There's 3 things that you need to consider. One is you need a sponsor. How do you get a sponsor? You sign up for volunteering programs or a new system. And you say, can I do something outside my normal job and work with these people so they get to know me? If you work at Databricks, do something for Eva so she knows who you are. And then after, behind closed doors, she's probably going to say that, oh, this person is amazing. I've seen her working outside her work. Very important, sponsor. If you have a notebook, write it down. Second of all, you need a coach. A coach is somebody that can teach you something with a beginning and an end, like keynote speaking. And a third is you need a mentor, either internally in the company or externally. Somebody that can open doors with their network and can help you also to move forward, to have a structural meeting with. And I think if you have those 3 tips, it's going to bring you very far. And also schedule a coffee date, right? With all of us. I don't know if they like to, but hey, just go for it. Just look at the names, send a message via LinkedIn. Do you want to grab a coffee for half an hour online? Can we have a chat? Build your network. Go for it.
That's amazing. I have to say, I read a lot about sponsors and coaches and mentors, but I've never heard anyone explain it so clearly in like 3 sentences. So thank you. I think that's a key takeaway for today already. Is there any other advice that anyone on the panel would give beyond those 3 points?
I can second that, definitely. What Wendy said. It is not difficult to find mentors. However, as you move along in that journey, you will notice that there are not enough people who are willing to sponsor it, and which is the most important thing if you want to move ahead, especially in corporate environment. So please start scanning your networks and start making yourself more and more visible. And yes, as a panelist, we always love to hear from you. But I'm told it's kind of scary. No, please, we're very friendly. Come and talk to us. Or send us a message.
That's great.
Just a note on that one, because I also think it's important that be really good at what you were hired for. Because sometimes I see people in their eagerness and their ambition, they're signing up for everything. And they're signing up for so much other things that they don't have time to do the real job. So yes, sign up. Yes, raise your hand. But first and foremost, be really, really, really good at what you actually are here to do, wherever you are. So I think that's super important. But then also, I fully agree, build networks. Building networks is super important. But also make sure that when you're building those networks, what's the relevance? So what do you bring to the table? So always be a little bit of what you said, how can I make my manager successful? What's in it for the other person to meet with you? So a little bit, think one step ahead of the gives and the gets. And always, pay it forward. If you are a sharing, caring person, people will do the same to you.
That's great. I like the little prioritization and focus in there.
Yeah, but sometimes people get lost and then they get very sort of angry when they get a rating and said, whoa, I've done so many things. And why don't I get this super exceeded rating? And then you say, fortunately, you haven't done your job. You have done a lot of other things. And you get gazillion of peer bonuses for everybody. Everybody loves you, but you're not focusing on what you're here to do. So striking that balance, I think is important.
All right. Thank you. Is there anything you want to add, Stacey, or shall I?
No, I think that's good.
Okay, perfect. I just want to check. All right, Eva, if I can ask you the next question then. What changes, potentially positive or negative, but maybe positive, have you seen in the industry since you started your career?
So I think that technology has become a much more fun place to be. So when I started back in 95, the tech industry and engineers and the whole community was perceived to be some weird geeks that, you know, were the odd birds in the party that nobody wanted to speak with, and everybody was, oh, I hope I don't get seated by that person. And I think now, with, you know, I think it started with the .com boom, with all the apps, and all of a sudden you had unicorn build apps, and all of a sudden now, being an engineer and being in the tech industry is super, super hot and super, super fun. So I think that is the way the whole industry has changed and shaped. Then I would say that for me, I find I have seen an advantage being a female in this male dominated. As I said in the beginning, for me, it has been easier sometimes. If I compare, I remember I was at Microsoft at Global Summit, and we were 2 ladies in that summit. It was me and Nina. We were the only ones that were business groups leads for server and tools. Then it was, you know, the rest of the room was men in beige chinos and light blue shirts. They looked like minions. You know, it's kind of funny. Whereas after, you know, in the first break, everybody knew who Eva and Nina was. And I kind of have seen that as an advantage. And again, you know, show that you're there because you know, meritocracy has paid its right into that one. But I think, you know, you always deserve a place at the table.
All right, thank you. Did you agree, Wendy? Because I saw.
No.
I was gonna say-
I love it. That's what it should be. That's
Well,
what-
I started in 2016, 2006. I started at Progress Software. Does that ring a bell? Progress Software, 4GL database.
not to me, maybe.
Okay, that's like pretty hardcore, kind of down, like very, very nerdy. And they said to me, so I did tourism in university in Breda, and then they said to me, this company, oh, if the CEO walks through the building, the money falls out of his pocket. Do you know how many parties they give and host? And I was like, I need to work there. That was my only reason to start working there. They said, what's the difference between hardware and software? And I was 27. I said, I have no idea, but I can learn. Right. And I started working there, and I had the time of my life. And I think for me, the pivotal moment that the industry changed as a woman was when Me Too came. That changed dramatically my life. So I was also a VP at Salesforce for Northern Europe. So I led lots of product lines, and I traveled a lot as well. And at Salesforce, life was so good because it felt so safe. And before that, the things that I experienced, I wouldn't want anybody to experience that in their lives. It was ridiculous. And then Me Too came, and I felt so much more safe. And I think it's 2015, 2016 that was. Oh, my life changed completely. And I think for everybody here, I think that's, for me, that was the biggest gift as a woman traveling international and working within a male environment world, somebody who's like outgoing and high energy, right? For me, that was the biggest gift. And I'm so happy that you don't have to experience that, hopefully, on a daily basis, what I had to experience when I was growing up in the world of technology.
Thank you. It's good to hear the double perspective, and I'm also quite happy to hear that Me Too had a real influence on our lives. So thank you for sharing. I'm going to move on to the next question, and perhaps Stacey, you can give some perspective on. So we taking a step back, we just talked about promotions and the careers in the industry, but we're also still looking to have more female in our industry. And what we've often heard is that reporters say, well, there's just a lack of female applicants. And the question then is, why are we still failing to attract female talent to technical professions? If you see this as well, and then why?
Look, the lack of balance is a persistent issue, even on my own teams throughout the years. But I would say is the problem is not attracting women to tech. Attraction is all about marketing. We have plenty of marketing. Everybody knows what tech is, and it is less scary now than it used to be. I haven't been invited to a strip club by my own team since 2010.
Oh,
so strong improvement. Not kidding. But what I would say is the problem is one of retention.
Okay.
As you hit every inflection point through your career, and particularly as you hit mid-career, every microaggression and if the cost of ambition is tone policing, is being assessed for your likability, is being assessed for your warmth, is being assessed for whether you are maternal or whether you are technical, then if you have choices, you will opt out. And so we have an incredibly leaky pipeline. And we used to just talk about that leaky pipeline in early career, but the pipeline becomes just a waterfall of people leaking out at mid-career as you realize, I don't have to do this. I can do something else. And so that's the problem. And the solution to retention is culture. And that is what so many of our tech companies, for all we've talked about the fun and the colors and the bouncy balls and the offices, none of that makes up for what you actually experience and feel on a day-to-day basis.
Okay. And I really like how you take that answer to retention rather than attraction, which I think is definitely one of a really big issue. Why fix the start if you cannot keep people when they've joined? Is there anything in particular you would say culturally that companies can do?
I mean, it is judging us on our accomplishments instead of judging us on the perception of us and having a very different standard. I have literally been told that my facial expressions were conveying my opinion of people. And I did what you may not want to admit you have done, but I went and got Botox. And I was still criticized in my next performance review for my facial expressions.
I love it.
Absolutely 100% true. And it did not work. Pro tip, it may have made me look a little younger, but it did not disguise my contempt for the men I was working with. And so that, what I would say is, if the company is judging us on our accomplishments, they will keep us there. And if they don't, they will not.
And that's why I think, can I build upon?
Yeah, of course, please. Go for it.
Yeah. Face angry, face happy, face sad. But that was not my add-on. So the interesting thing was, I think first and foremost, for the times that you can choose your manager, which is usually when you're in a hiring position, choose it very, 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 very deliberately. Really, if you feel something is not right, probably it's not right. And never ever stay with a toxic manager, because it's going to kill you. Walk away from that, and also make sure that the company you're joining, that's why I've actually enjoyed working with American companies, because the performance management culture is very strong. And I think that actually serves females better, because when you have a very clear performance management, it's not about who you know and with whom you're going to after work with. It's about accomplishment. It's about being very precise on the expectations, and then having very, very structured ways of measuring that performance that usually helps females to elaborate around their accomplishments rather than just out of the blue bragging. Again, being a little bit judgmental here, but I really, really am a firm believer of very, very strong and clear and structured performance management, because that helps everybody to know what we are here to achieve.
To be clear, the person who gave me that feedback about my face no longer apparently works in engineering. But
I was hoping he was sitting here.
Yeah.
he is not in the room, but and he's no longer in engineering, according to my sources.
Okay. Well, that's good.
But so just for the male allies in the audience, that kind of judgment doesn't get you ahead either. But it was absolutely in my performance review.
Oh wow, that's thank you for sharing this story. I think there is a bit of a leeway here into our next question, which I was going to ask to Eva, so I'm going to move on to that. So a lot of the time we talk about DEI, so diversity, equality, inclusion, and a lot of the time it's focused on it being performative. But how can we actually move away from performative DEI towards more real structural change that all of us feel and potentially also helps with retention?
Sure. First of all, I think the way we've been framing this whole debate so far, a lot of the times we tend to focus on, burdening women with more and more of things that they need to do, they need to change, they need to look at, they need to address, instead of saying, okay, there is a systemic problem here. The way companies hire, the way they interview, especially if you are not your regular candidates for a tech role, and it's already starts there, and it defines how then you're going to be taken on for any tech role, and then how you grow within that company. And I think we don't discuss enough about how what you said about culture, that starts there, and it needs to change. The moment there is a policy change, whether it's from US or mostly it's kind of trickles down from the US, if they start canceling their DEI programs, which were maybe doing a lot or not, that's debatable, but then it's a trickle down thing, and then a lot of other companies then just follow suit and start. So whenever there are layoffs, you will notice some of the first people that get fired, who are they? And we all know who they are, right? They are definitely those underrepresented groups which don't fit in that ideal profile of a tech person. That definitely needs to change. We need to burden the women less with what they can do to change themselves, right? We say, or I've been advocating now for the past 6-7 years, like we need to stop fixing women. It's not the women who are broken, it's the whole system that's broken, and that to begin with. And we're constantly, this is and I'm speaking from frustration, a very solid example. We would keep training women, and these are highly educated women, right? It's just that they did not have the network in the country. They would go on and do those interviews, and if we had strong allies / backers within that company, they would get hired. Otherwise, they would not get hired, right? And then they would go and work for startups, and they would make their mark, and then they can climb up that career ladder. So it did work, but we faced the same problem over and over again with the way they were hiring, with especially the big corporations, the way they hire. And if they do, it's because they're looking for a diversity hire. It doesn't help us, right? So that's why we are a strong advocate for, if you're really serious, focus on that cultural shift within, so that you don't have to burden more of those underrepresented groups / women in how this needs to be fixed. And we need to look at ourselves. Instead of saying, okay, why aren't there more women in tech? We need to start asking ourselves as companies, okay, perhaps there's some role we are playing in it as well. Why are we excluding them? Because that's what's happening.
I think that's a great twist on the perspective. It's also coming back to what we said before around acceptance. So if we're accepting that we're not a problem, but maybe the system is I think what I'm hearing to some extent.
Yeah, I mean, feel free to raise your hand and give us a counter opinion, but this is what I've experienced in our career of actually pushing more of these groups into the tech industry. And it's not for the lack of talent. It's not because they're not on merit. These are people who are really highly educated, and when we put them in hackathons and in competitions, the kind of solutions, technological solutions that they build within a week is just amazing.
Thank you for sharing. Yeah, no, it's great to hear the perspective. I have a question still for Wendy. Sorry, I just noticed a mixture question up. I hope that's okay. But Wendy, talking about also, you just mentioned your input on coaches and mentors, etc. There's also a role to play for allyship, or male allyship specifically. I was wondering if you have examples of what real male allyship looks like in practice, and also how we can gain that support.
No, I think there are so many allies. There's allies here, right, as well. So thank you for being here. And I think in every company there are allies. And I had to. Well, I always looked in the organization and thought, who could be my mentor, and then become my sponsor and become an ally. So I have two. One is now the MD of Oracle. Kind of nice that he moved there, and the other one is the COO for Microsoft. Kind of nice that he moved there now. So one has been 5 years my mentor, but he wasn't then at Microsoft. He just started. And I asked the then MD for Northern Europe, Angelique de Vries. She is actually at a Workday. And I asked, who do you think should be my mentor? And she said, oh, you should ask Jeroen Heijmans. So I went to him to say, hey, can you be my mentor? Because she tells you to be my mentor, actually. And he wasn't in my line of reporting. And then I became the president of the Women's Network. And I needed, how did you call it? They have like a very fancy name to have an ally from the US, which you need to like show that you have an ally. And I said, Jeroen, can you be the ally? And he didn't have any, like, he wasn't like, oh, there's something in it for me, but he couldn't really say no. Right? And I made him the official ally for all the women within Salesforce Netherlands. Right? And now he's like forefront, because if you put somebody on stage, whenever you have to present somewhere, you say, okay, you come with me on stage and, oh, thank the audience, this is our ally. Somebody can't really say no, right? They take that role. So I think allies, if I speak to men, regardless which job they have, people are very happy to stand up and to present as an ally. There's very few people that say, I don't want to do this. So I think ask, but also sometimes push people in a little bit of an ally. And I also believe that you should use your female powers, what you said. So I'm also sales, right? You probably already noticed. And what I, for example, do in a meeting, there's a deal or there's a problem and there's all guys. And you know, when guys are in a meeting, they talk in a different way to each other. Like, oh, you messed this up. When there's a woman in the room, the whole energy changes. And what I've learned, there's always one man that is your ally. In any room, it doesn't matter if they work for you or not, there's one man that shows up and is going to protect you. So you have to be aware of that, like find the energy. And it's in every meeting, in every place, you can use your feminine energy to see who's my ally. So not only on a big scale, but also for you alone in every meeting, coffee machine, and try to educate yourself or get, I don't know, be aware of that or feel the energy so you know how the game plays or how that feels. I don't know if you have anything to add.
I have a very simple tip, because I think that allyship, because sometimes I'm getting a bit sick and tired of, oh, I'm a feminist, and you say it on LinkedIn, and oh, I support females. Oh, this is such a bullshit. I'd rather see it in action. And seeing it in action for me is put your sensors out. And when you're in a room, this is a quite, frequent thing that happens, that, a woman says something. And then 5 minutes later, a man says the same things, but with a little bit other words. Then you can put your sensors on, being a man or actually being a colleague, and say, hey, Bob, I think that Anna just said that 5 minutes ago. So Anna, can you please expand a bit on that thinking? So I think it's about, stepping in and doing that instantly when you find and see those weird things happening in the room, because that's when you show real, true allyship. So it's being in the moment and react instantly.
I really like that example. It's I've had a man step in for me in that way in the past, and it's been turned out to be a great meeting. Yeah. It's great if people do that more. Thank you for sharing. And it also actually ties in very well into the final question I wanted to ask to each of you. So the question is, what's one action or one advice you would give to the women in the room today that they can do tomorrow? With the alternative being, what can an ally do tomorrow to really help move this all forward? I'm going to start with Stacey. If you want to share a piece of advice for the room.
So this tags on quite closely to what we just heard, but identify who your coalition is in any room. And sometimes that's another woman. Sometimes it's a man who is more open or who just agrees with you on the fundamentals of things, and build that relationship before you walk into the room so that they back you up in the room. Because if you're in there alone, you'll never win the room. You always need a second person there to say what she said. That's the first and most important thing you can do, is find your person in the room, whoever they might be.
Thank you. Do you want to add something, Eva?
Yeah, sure. I think one you can say is kind of cliche, but Don't ask for permission, ask for forgiveness. I think that's important. Step ahead, take one step ahead. Don't be afraid of doing that. Again, going back to my surgeon, what's the worst thing that can happen if I do that? But then I think it's also important, even though it's great with this, women in data and female communities, but also make sure that you are bonding and networking in a male community. I usually encourage females to have a male mentor and not a female mentor. So, learn the language, learn the socials, and interact not only with, the ones in the same position. So expand that whole footprint, I think, is super important.
That's great. It's telling women to get a male mentor, but also allies
100%.
to take their
Both
female
ways work
mentees.
perfectly.
Yeah.
It's not only about women.
Very
But
efficient.
it's about learning something different and getting another perspective, not having a mirror.
Great. Thank you. Wendy?
I think this counts for all of the people, but especially for women or minorities. Find a best friend within your company, please. I think that's the only solution, that if something happens, you have somebody to say, shall we grab a coffee?
Yep.
I just need to share my story. I think that's the one thing. If you don't have a best friend in the company, tomorrow you wake up, you go into the office and you find yourself a best friend.
Thank you.
Important. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, good. Eva?
I think I'll agree with what you said. We called it a coalition. We say start building your tribe, and start. When I moved and started doing this work, I did not know anyone in this country, so I started one by one to build my network, women and men, and people of other genders who were supportive of the mindset or your growth journey, your career journey. Start identifying them and start building that tribe around you, and start sharing more and more. I feel like patriarchy, I don't want to sound like hardcore feminist, I am, but I feel like a lot of the times patriarchy tends to pitch females against each other, and that's almost never worked in our favor. So please keep an eye on that. We need both female and male and other genders in our network. So make sure that when you're building that, both in terms of people who mentor you, who are sponsoring you, that they are a healthy mix of all of them, because some of the experiences that the senior female managers could have gone through and how they navigated it, I think we can also learn a lot from that. But at the same time, when my first brush with imposter syndrome, one of our male allies said, "What are you even talking about? I have that too, and I lie through my teeth." I'm like, okay, this is how they got ahead in their career. He said, "I did not know that coding language," and I said, "Yeah, I can do it." And he got the job, and then he learned and he did it. I'm not advocating that I could never do that, because my integrity wouldn't allow me to do that. But at the same time, the example is about imposter syndrome. We shouldn't let it hold us back, if that's the case. So that is my advice. Start building your tribe.
Thank you. I love how all of you talk about connection and coming together. So thank you for sharing. We have some time for one or two questions from the room, I think. I don't know if anyone has thought of a question.
Hi guys. To support the questions,
Yeah.
I have t-shirts for you. So who is gonna do the questions? I have t-shirt for you. I'm not Oprah, so I don't have underwear. So you can, of your question, you can come to me. And can I hijack the first question?
Do you want a t-shirt?
I have been one of the victims of the layoffs recently as a data enablement director. And how any tips and tricks, how to do not go crazy in this period, that there is a garden leave, okay, financially you're stable, but still there is like, but what if I don't get a job? What if I don't have, what is happening? And so forth. It's a hit on the self-confidence, and the imposter syndrome comes up. But any tips and tricks, like, because now you feel like, oh my God, I will never get a job again.
Yeah. Is there anyone? Eva, do you want to, or Wendy?
Well, I have one tip. is that you have to create a backup plan for yourself, because it gives you rest. It's not a holiday that you go through. You have all these emotions. So give yourself time to process the emotions, because it's not about you. It's about the company's restructuring and you don't fit in it. So don't take it too personal, but create a backup plan. If you live in the Netherlands, you probably have a UAV. And you need to, for anybody that goes through, and I did this with my team because I had to let go half my team when I was still working at Salesforce. And I had them create a CV, and then have them talk to 2 headhunters and have the financial backup plan. So just write it out. Phone the UFA. How long are you going to pay me for? Is it a year? Okay, so that means after garden leave, I have another year. And it gives you some peace of mind. So make it like on paper. Seriously, write your backup plan financially out. It's going to give you a little bit of sense of relief, hopefully.
Yeah, what I tend to do, we all spiral especially when we watch news these days. You know, it's kind of hard. It's uncertain and everything. So what I tend to do for myself is I start making a list of A, accomplishments, and B, what's good in life right now. Let's start there. It calms your nervous system down a bit, and then you can think clearly and plan ahead for the steps that Wendy just mentioned. So start there, I would say, and keep that list handy. So whenever you find yourself spiraling, you can go through that again or add more things to it. Because when we are working towards a goal, we tend to forget and be grateful, and live in the moment of gratitude that, okay, we have all that, we're all sitting here in this building. We are talking to each other. We're safe, right? So, bring yourself to that moment, and it helps to again, calm the nervous system down enough so that you can think clearly and plan ahead. And we have options. We always have options. So that's helpful to remind ourselves, I believe.
Thank you for sharing, both of you. Is there any?
I can just, because I really, really, really want to emphasize that, it's okay first and foremost to grieve, to be sad, to be angry, to be annoyed, all those emotions. Let them be, to your point. But don't take it personally. You had no control over that one. So let that sink in. But then also the plan, make it a targeted plan. Don't start shooting 300 outreaches. Be super relevant, be super specific. Rather do it fewer but much, much more to the point. And also leverage your network, but don't go completely bananas, because you need to ask a person that actually could open the door on your behalf, because they have some kind of actual connection with you. So you need to plan and you need to take action, but make it very, very structured and planned, rather than just shooting from airplanes. But be very precise and to the point. And for each and every outreach, be super, super relevant on that one. And try to have somebody else, a little bit to your point, the angelic degrees that open. So if you can have a little bit of that somebody can say, maybe this is a good lunch to have, or a coffee, or just a phone call. Things are going to work out.
Thank you. Stacey, any final words on the question?
Yeah, to Eva's point, I've seen so many networking events for people in this sort of situation, or who have come here as trailing spouses, equally common, where they're networking with each other and none of them have the power to help. Right?
Yeah.
So do be really cautious about where you're investing your energy, but also be investing energy somewhere. If you find some targeted opportunities to go after, and use other time to get outside, to touch grass. Because if you, when you go through these things and you are grieving, it can be so natural to turn inward, to turn dark, and to stay physically on the couch. And I've been there, but that just starts the spiral. So do whatever you can to break the pattern, to keep your energy up, and to invest your time in things that can have an impact.
Thank you. I love how we have some coping strategies and some feel-good advice all together. So I hope that that helps. We're moving on to, I think, a final question. Is there time? Yeah? we have time for a final question. Does anyone have a question? I think, Charlotte, I'm going to hand you the microphone so we catch the
No, yeah.
question.
So I was very inspired because I'm saying the same thing. Hey, where are the women after 40? Right? So I see they're here. Apparently they're all going to get it tonight. But in general, when I'm walking around in tech, I see women, young women, okay, and then indeed what Stacey was saying, hey, there's a leaky pipeline because then somehow they're gone, or either they weren't there 10 years ago or something, or they were not, or I don't know what happened there. But basically was what I was wondering from your experience, like, because it cannot only be, I mean, I like to believe that 20 years ago or 30 years ago, when my mom was younger, there was also like a, female positive movement going on. Maybe not necessarily only in tech, but in other sides. What's happening with the leaking pipeline? What is, in your opinion, the cause of that? Like,
Look, I will say there are more women entering tech today than there were when I came up. I'm very close to, I graduated college only a year after Eva. And when the college I went to was a technical college back in the States, and it was 25% women. And today it is 50% women. So there are more women entering the pipeline now. But I will say the percentage of women on the average engineering team I was in the early 2000s looks very similar to the percentage of women that have been on my team in the last 10 years. That hasn't changed. But it is, and I honestly saw this in grad school too, which was way back in the 90s, that there was a leaking pipeline in my own graduate program. It entered at a very even distribution between women and men, and into the PhD program, and many of the women, including myself, left. And I was asked, why are so many of you leaving? And I was just like, because I don't need to be here. I can go, it's the mid 90s and I live in Silicon Valley. I can get a job tomorrow, and I did. I don't need a PhD. My self, perception and who I am is not tied up in becoming a professor. And I recognize that this isn't something I want to do. It's not something I feel I will be rewarded by. And it's not something that I'm going to go through this level of pain to get that credential so I can, for whatever reason I enrolled in that program, which I can no longer remember. But the men in the program, they'd committed to it. And they were like, I can't be hazed out of anything. So I am going to stick, and I don't know what they're doing today, but I think I'm a lot happier with how my life turned out than I would have been had I stuck with the wrong thing. So the same thing applies to the pipeline today. And, with senior positions, getting to director or getting to VP, there's a limit to what any of us who have other choices that we can make with our lives will put ourselves through. And once we hit, whether it's our number or whether we see an alternate path to take, at which point we will choose to leave. And as long as it remains a question of hazing, there's a limit to what any of us will choose to put up with. And it may be that there's something different driving other demographies, or maybe fewer, a little bit less hazing. But that's my experience.
And I can put a more of a personal touch to it too, because I think that one of the most important things is be very, very deliberate when you're choosing a partner for life. Because obviously, I could never, ever be where I am right now if I hadn't had a super duper supporting husband. and the love of my life for the last 30 years. This doesn't come for free. This needs to be constantly worked upon and discussed. And in the early days we were both running very, very actively, both having big careers going on, and then you need to constantly discuss whose time is it now, and now you actually need to stand back a little bit, because I need to put more hours into work. I have a new job. You need to pick up the kids 5 days a week, because now I need to have free weight. And then you constantly need to have those conversations at home. Are we good as a team? And are we actually fulfilling ourselves? One thing is to stay true to the relationship, but also, can I really feel that I can be at my best? And do I really get the self-development? And it's a tough thing, because sometimes I see that things tend to slide. You have this horrible thing if your partner is starting to earn much more money, and all of a sudden the gap becomes so wide. So then all of a sudden you can say, maybe I don't have to proceed. Maybe I can do things differently. And so I think that super tight partnerships with whomever you decide to spend your life with.
So I choose to choose my life together with a child. So I don't have a husband, I don't have a partner. I have on my own an 8-year-old girl. I'm 47 and I do it all. I was a VP at Salesforce. I ran Northern Europe for 3 product lines. I was the president of the Women's Network. I have 2 horses and I do it all. And then there was a moment in my career that I thought, I want to make the world a better place in tech for you. My ego is fulfilled. I have everything that I want. I love my life. I love myself. I'm very happy. I meet all of you in different places. I see so many amazing women. Let me open the doors for you. Let me make you believe in yourself, because it makes me happy. And I only live once. So let me help you, because I want to be the best role model for my child. And I want to be the best role model for you. So I choose to, well, I don't think it's choosing. I think it just didn't work out with people. And then suddenly I had a kid on my own. But and now she's 8 and she's starting her own 3D company and she's amazing. And I love life. So I think as one of I know people are moving out. We had all these numbers as well. But at Salesforce, it was in Dublin that the people ran out and didn't stay. We also focused on where do we lose the people. And I also see people of my own age leaving companies. But I think it's also because you get a bit older, and probably in 10, 20 years time, there's so many more women that work in AI and there's so many more opportunities now that probably in 20 years, there's a lot more 40-year-old women in tech than now. Because you all stay working there and being a mom or a dad, or, you have, like me, 2 dogs as well. Just, fill up your house. And then work, right? The world is changing, and it's not like when we started, it was a complete different world.
Can I just say, I do want to say that what you said about your husband means so much to me, because my wife actually had a hugely successful career in sales, which she left behind partly when we moved here. Then she actually took a position well outside her original career track at the company I was working at, just to get to see me during the day, because my hours were such that was the only way. And a ton of people were very confused by what this 50-year-old woman was doing, taking this job well below what she had ever done before. And I think she did an amazing job with it while she did it. And then eventually I left that company, and she eventually left that job behind as well. And is now happily re-retired with me. But the things I was able to do in the last 10 years are because she made very deliberate and very expensive sacrifices to put my career first. And a ton of people didn't realize, that those were choices that the 2 of us made together. And being a same-sex couple, we had slightly different, dynamics in our relationship that we were coming into that with. But that is also how I lasted as long as I did.
Thank you for sharing. Thank you for sharing these, I would say, deeply personal stories even. So I don't know, Eva, is there anything you still want to join or add on this question?
No, I completely agree with everything that has been said, and to answer her question again, after a while in that career and fighting, sexism and all those things, you just get so exhausted. You're like, okay, do I still want to keep doing this, or do I, take on any better opportunity that comes along and just get on with my life? And it shouldn't be like that, I'm saying, but that's what was happening a lot of the times. We would finally get our trained people, graduates, our graduate women hired as a web developer, and after a year they would just go, oh my god. And it's not because of the job, it was just that environment around them was just so toxic, and they said our mental health is just not worth it. And it's improving, like you said. Now with the AI, there's a sudden change all of a sudden. Like in 5 years, I think I'm going to be very happy if I would be surprised if I still get invited to these kind of panels, because they're going to be like, we've got this, girl, you can rest now, you can retire now. We've got this, because it has changed a lot in terms of the number of women that are entering, the number of women. Now we work closely with the universities, almost all of them who are leading a lot of those departments, they're female finally. The education department in the Netherlands has a lot to work on still, because we're still not promoting STEM related fields, especially for girls at primary school level, which of course reflects in how many of them then end up choosing those careers. That is something that still worries me, especially being the mother of 2 girls who are 11 and 13, and we kind of had to actively do things to keep them interested in, not just being users, but also not just consumers, but also producers. But that's not the case for a lot of the girls that, a lot of their friends that we see, and how they're, perceiving technology. So that definitely needs to change, but there is change. So I'm hopeful.
You sound optimistic, which I quite like. I think that was the time we had for questions. So I want to thank you all for your perspectives and your personal stories and your insights. So thank you very much for sharing with us tonight. And then I'm sure you guys will want to help me thank them by a round of applause.